Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Welcome to Sipore Amenu, Stories of Our People. This is an ongoing project between the Jewish Federation of Orange County and the Orange County Board of Rabbis. My name is Rabbi Sarah DePaolo. I'm one of the rabbis at Congregation Shir-Ha-Ma'alot. And I'm joined today with a dear friend, a colleague.
Hi, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. I'm Rabbi Marcia Tilchin, and I'm the founder of the Jewish Collaborative of Orange County, dedicated to building community through collaboration. And I'm thrilled to be back. This is my first conversation in the book of Exodus. I had the chance to be part of Sipurei Reshit a few times, and I'm thrilled to be able to be with my colleague, Sarah. This is our first conversation together.
Hi, Marcia. Good to see you.
Good to see you. So, Sarah, here's my question. Parashat Truma. The concept at the beginning of when the rabbis discuss why do they call it Truma? Why do they refer to the gifts brought to the creation of the tabernacle? And I'm guessing, now that I've said that, we should probably actually give a 30-second introduction to why people are bringing gifts to the building of the tabernacle. So suffice it to say that 2 weeks ago, everybody was standing at the foot of Sinai. They received the 10 commandments. It was a sound and light show like probably no other in history.
An awesome experience.
Correct. And then last week, we began in Parshat Mishpatim, sort of filling out the holes. Like, what does it mean when you have the structure of the original Aseret HaDibrot? What really goes in there? What laws, how would that apply? And it was all very legalistic. And then now the question is, we're about to leave Sinai. And when we leave Sinai, here's the question: are we leaving God? Or not? And I think the idea that we have to create a sacred space for God to dwell, so that we, even though we're leaving the site of revelation goes with us. And the Mishkan, the traveling tabernacle, is going to be exactly how we manifest that, how we feel God's presence right, with us. So in the beginning of that, God says, okay, you're going to have them bring me truma, these personal gifts. And I want to know if you had any thoughts about, what does that mean to you?
Well, I really love the imagery of God inviting everybody to participate in this building exercise, in the process of bringing these free will gifts that they want to use, the things that they care most about, that they want to share in order to create a dwelling place for God. I think sometimes we're a little shy about asking people to participate in Jewish communal experiences. We don't want to make them feel guilty about not showing up or feeling or that they're not doing enough, but that this is an opportunity for people to bring the part of themselves that they love the most. And that's one of the things that I really love to do as a rabbi, is like invite people to bring the part of themselves that they love the most, the part that they're really proud of, and then share it with the rest of the community.
Well, I totally admire that and appreciate that. And I would say that was also, certainly when I was in the pulpit, a strength that I had. Like everybody could find their place of leadership because everybody had what to offer. And I'm sure I know you're wonderful at doing that. The thing that's so odd about it, though, is it talks about these free will offerings, but then the parasha goes on to tell you exactly what's needed. I need 5 of these and 6 of those, and it has to be this long and whatever. And that's one of the challenges in sort of reconciling that tension between free will and absolute law and instruction. And again, I think, in everything in life, that's the tension, that's the balance. And even for people, living Jewishly today, I would just say, you have to give of yourself to get back from whatever part of Judaism is speaking to you. And yet at the same time, it's not a free-for-all. there we do have sacred space, we have sacred time, we have sacred deeds, right? There are things, because otherwise we could be like anybody else. What is distinctly Jewish? And
Right.
I'd love to, I mean, that I think that's a challenge that we all face. Um, any thoughts? I had another thing that I wanted to share, but I just on that train of thought. Was there anything you wanted to share?
So I think the challenge that you're talking about, that you're bringing up, is a challenge that we feel all the time. And it's not, it's the challenge of living within law and order, and also the challenge of just being in community with other people, which is that sometimes we want to share everything, but maybe there's a way that there's a structure that also has to be followed. There are things that we actually need as a community in order to get going, in order to make things happen, in order to create a holy space, as it were.
You just made me think about something too, so interesting. In this parsha is one of the most famous lines of Torah, "Ve'asuli mikdash ve'shachanti betocham."
Mm-hmm.
You shall make for me a sanctuary, and I will dwell among them. And then, but of course, this sanctuary predates the temple in Jerusalem, which was the Beit Hamikdash. And so, this was wherever the Israelites went, so went God. But once they got into the land, and the whole focus of Jewish life became the centralized cult, where you could do Jewish, in the north of Israel or even in Egypt or whatever, but everything really was focused on the temple. It makes me think of the two different jobs that you and I have. You work within the structure of a synagogue. You're devoted to a synagogue. That is not that you don't do other things in the county, that's your place. And the Judaism that I'm trying to sort of cultivate and figure out how to nurture is the one that floats.
Yeah.
Because sometimes there are people who are wandering, and there are people who want to be centrally located. And I think that is a sort of just a very interesting, this is where we find ourselves today in Jewish life. And the truth is that what this parasha teaches, that God is everywhere. God is when you're walking. It's in the deeds that you do, in the actions that you take, in the places that you go. But God can also be found centrally located, where community gets together and knows each other and loves each other, supports each other, and whatnot. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that line, that verse in particular, it was for generations of Jewish communities in North America. It was put on synagogue walls to talk about, here's our sanctuary, and here's where God is going to dwell amongst us. But then in the last 2 years, even established communities have had to redefine how we gather, how we build community, how we find God. And what I particularly love about that verse is that in Hebrew, there are two kinds of root words to talk about dwelling. There's one that's a lot more permanent. That's really about staying where we are, but that's not what this verse and this week's portion is talking about. The root is shin chaf nun, which is about traveling but dwelling. It is a traveling sanctuary, and that's what the Mishkan is. And I think that imagery has really shaped and influenced how I think about Jewish community the last 2 years, that it's nice to have a permanent sanctuary. It's nice to have a place like the temple in Jerusalem to direct our thoughts and focus towards. But ultimately, Judaism can happen anywhere. And that is one of the most important lessons of that verse, that our community, our connection to God, can be anywhere that people are gathering together to build a metaphorical or physical holy space.
I agree. And I think one of the things that highlights that the most, and is that, Mount Sinai is not a pilgrimage site for us. I mean, like, something amazing happened there. There was an encounter that was so profound that the world is forever changed.
Yeah.
And yet it's a mountain. Like, once that was over, it was over. And, even when, and so to your point, even when people couldn't gather in the sanctuaries that they know and feel comfortable with, they were still able to invoke prayer and community and pivot, in so many ways that we never even dreamed that we could pivot in order to love and support each other and find God together and learn. And in fact, through the pivot, many of us, and I'm sure this happened, in fact, I even recall, I think it was Rabbi Rick who said early on in the whole, went like in like late March, he goes, I'm getting more people to shul online than I ever did when we had shul like in person, meaning it actually opened up doors and portals to invigorating community in a new kind of way. And right?
Yeah, absolutely. It was one of the most exciting surprises and most meaningful surprises from the last 2 years, which is to realize people really do want to be part of community. They want to experience Shabbat together. There are sometimes barriers for them walking in the door, and having all of these multiple entry points that we've developed has really opened up a lot of new passageways for people.
Um, the so yeah. And by the way, the other thing I'll just share is that, the idea of being able to create sanctuary online, in a backyard or whatever is really so speaks to the heart of what this is, because it's not so much the details of how many dolphin skins and how much jewelry and how much gold. Although that's what I wanted to talk to you about in this second part, which is that why the detail, right? Why? It could have said it needs to be about this big. You're going to have like a holy of holies, and it's going to be in 3 sections. It could have been much more generalized and still, been what it was. And so, one of the things that I was studying earlier this week was the notion that these specific details about how much and how long and how big and where and who's standing where and how much copper and what's made of what, all of that is not about it's not actually about the stuff itself. But this was God's way of saying, I want you to know that I'm in every fiber of this holy dwelling. Not that I cared so much that every little like hook came from me, and I thought that was such a beautiful image, that God, that it wasn't just because God was like like an interior designer or something, like it wasn't about it was so much. And what do you think? I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, it makes me think of the very non-Jewish cliche that the devil is in the details, but that's actually not the point of this at all. In fact, it's saying God is in the details, which is a much more powerful way of imagining it, that every tiny little detail in our lives, we can invite God into. We can imagine God being a part of the littlest little tiny blades of grass even. And that's, I mean, kind of a wondrous idea.
I love that. And I guess the thing that I would hope for all of us, for everybody who's joining us today, is, just to realize that, that beautiful song, this is the house of the Lord, we give our best to you, right? I think that's from Psalm 122, that anywhere that we gather to appreciate all that God has given the world, including the commandments, the Jewish commandments to live Jewishly and by these ethics and values and laws, and to do these rituals. Anywhere that happens, we have made a mikdash, we've given our best, and God dwells among us. And may it be so for everybody who's looking for that and needing that right now.
That's beautiful. I really appreciate that. I I don't think there's much we can add to that except to say to imagine that we're carrying God with us in our own sanctuaries everywhere we go.
I have an idea that probably has never been done on this, but I know you have such a beautiful voice. So why don't we tag team, since we can't sing together, the Asuli Mikdash. So you can, do you know, oh Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary? So you do the English and I'll fill in with the Hebrew. Is that okay?
Okay. Oh Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary. Oh no, I don't remember the rest.
Pure and holy, tried and true.
And with thanksgiving, I'll be a living sanctuary for you.
Asuli Mikdash Vishachanti Betocham Vanachnu Nivarech Ya Me'ata V'yad Olam. Shabbat Shalom, Sarah.
Shabbat Shalom, Marcia. Good to see you. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Thanks for being with us this morning.